Another argument, maybe connected to vegan, is that it is like the energy of raw vegan is cold. Can you refer to it? Because the energy of the food, I mean, it's raw, it's green, salads. So if a person, like a cold person, wants something to hit him, so
okay, good. Thank you for asking that question. And it brings up a whole series of kapha, pitta, vata, and so forth. And first, of course, if you're a pitta, cooler foods are going to be better for you. So raw foods for pitta that are bland, B-L-A-N-D, bland, are better for pitta. So immediately, pittas are removed from the discussion of the objection. Now, cold foods. Let's define cold. Are you implying that if you cook the food, it's warm? Is that what we're saying? Because the minute you take the idea of cooking food and you talk about spices, cayenne, ginger, what does that do to the food? What's that do to the food? Of course it heats. I just got too much ginger. Hold on a second. So, wait a second here. I love ginger. Why do I love ginger? Tell me. Because I'm kapha. But I just had too much ginger. Now, does that answer your question? You know, you got cayenne, you got ginger, you got all kinds of heating spices. You're going to heat up the food. So it's a false argument that many people make. That's why I like you asking the question, because I didn't address that. Second thing, and this is very important to understand, is that you can warm foods without destroying their qualities. I mentioned the other day, but 115 degrees, no problem. Well, how hot is 115 degrees? It's hot to touch.
Fahrenheit.
What? Fahrenheit. Fahrenheit.
How much is it? 45, 43. About 45.
Okay. What's the point? You can put a plate in the oven, heat the plate, and it's going to warm the food. You can put a whole salad if you're having trouble and put it in the oven for 30 seconds. You're going to have warm food. What do people do when they cook the food? You take a hot soup, you boil the soup, it burns your tongue, and you have to wait till it cools off, right? Just think about that for a second. So why not warm your soup to 115 degrees, measure it, and you can finger touch. It's hot to touch, that's about 115 degrees Fahrenheit. Is that warm or not? It's warm, of course. You see what I'm saying? So the whole rhetoric is not true.
115 Fahrenheit is 46 Celsius.
Okay.
46.
So that's the point. So we don't have any trouble with warm. We have spices and we can actually warm the food. We can also, salad dressing, put hot salad dressing over a salad, warm the plate. There's just no problem. So I kind of make that point. For me, I use a lot of spices. They said I just hit a little bit too much ginger. I use a thing, and I'm not sure we're carrying yet, but I have the ginger concentrates about 30 times. It's really good stuff. And anyway, it's for us kaphas. Okay. Now, there's another issue. I hope that answered the question, But wait, let me go to the next point so I don't get diverted here. The next question is, does eating live food create a vata imbalance? Classically, Ayurvedic will tell you a live food diet will create a vata imbalance. And let me say, from the Ayurvedic point of view of 100 or 200 years ago, they are correct. Okay, now I just confused you. The fact is they're correct because in those days, that's actually good, thank you. I do better with light. Yeah, I do better with light. In those days, live food was leafy greens and sprouts. Got it? That's vata producing. But if you look at our diet today, and particularly the diet I've designed with conscious eating and so forth, we don't just have leafy greens and sprouts. We have seed pates, which have plenty of ojas and are very balancing to vata because they have the oil. We have the omega-3s. That's enough in a sense. We have bee pollen, which is very, again, grounding and very non-vata. So there are lots of things that are, and we have our smoothies. So what balances vata is smooth, sweet, and kind of, well, smooth and sweet are key, and a little salty. Okay? So we have all the components to always be balancing the vata. So initially they were right, and they were right. If all you see is leafy greens and sprouts is what live food is. But if you see what we eat today, it's completely wrong, completely inaccurate. So I bring that up too, that these are statements that kind of come from a different period of time. Chinese medicine, same thing. So I'm kind of treading on some interesting ground here. So in Chinese medicine, basically their belief was you need to eat meat to be healthy. And they were right. If you understand the Chinese thing, and this is the trouble with some of the recent work about the China study, they found that people who eat meat have more cancer and heart disease. Okay, now, that's a statistical play. What's the real story? The real story is people who are poor didn't have adequate nutrition. Not only were they vegan, but they didn't live very long because they didn't have adequate nutrition. They didn't live long enough to get cancer and heart disease. Now just get what I'm saying. It's really important. These are the kinds of things that are really misuse of statistics. So I'm giving you another piece of information that I'm not happy with. So in Chinese medicine is the wealthy ate better and they lived longer and they had some meat. The poor people had inadequate nutrition, seriously inadequate nutrition, had weaker immune systems, and didn't live long enough to get cancer or heart disease. Isn't that interesting? Now, turn that around again and say, well, if you're vegan the way we eat, there is no problem. If you don't hardly have anything to eat, and you're eating vegan only not out of choice, you're eating it because you're getting a little bit of, grass and a little bit of this, you're just not going to live long and you die. Now, interesting thing is, research in India, looking at some of this, and actually the China study, actually showed that when you fed the animals kind of an inadequate vegan nutrition, they did not get heart disease or cancer, but they lived much less long. See, this is an interesting point. You got to live long enough to get heart disease and cancer, don't you? Big problem. So the same thing happened. The animals died who were on the low protein diet because they didn't have enough protein to function adequately. Not good immune systems, they died. Animals that got adequate protein had more cancer and heart disease, but they also lived longer. Little detail that got neglected in the discussion. Anybody remember in the China study about who lived longer? It's not in this discussion. In the actual data, which was very thick before he made the popular thing, he actually says people with higher protein live longer. So the word longevity is different than who gets cancer and heart disease. Follow what I just said. You want longevity, okay, you need to have adequate protein. And that's the point. So, do you see what people follow what I just said? I'm saying, in inadequate protein, you're not going to live as long, but you won't get cancer and heart disease because you don't live long enough. Adequate protein, you live longer, and you're going to have more cancer and heart disease. But to say meat protein causes cancer and heart disease, well, I think it does, but I'm saying something very different when we do a statistical thing. And that's the whole thing about the Chinese saying you need meat. Well, you're darn right you do, because people didn't have enough, what we have today, to balance that. Follow what I'm saying? But today we don't have any problem. So you don't have what the Chinese call a yin-qi deficiency. Spleen-qi deficiency is what they call it. That happens when you don't have enough protein and other things. We have all kinds of herbs, which we've been talking about, that's no problem. You see, that balance it, plus we get adequate nutrition that we don't have that problem. So these are true and not true. Historically, with inadequate nutrition, they're more true, but not today. So that's the answer to the Chinese thing about yin-qi deficiency, and it's also the answer to the vata thing with the live foods from the Ayurvedic. Does that help understand, even though you didn't ask you only asked part of the question? But you got me going, which is good.